sinister than the definite form of narrative. You are charged
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. And what I want to talk about today is something that I believe is a little bit controversial, but it is near and dear to my heart because I believe that we have a serious problem related to perceptions of veterans in the United States and why I think we need to move beyond awareness campaigns. Now, according to Pew Research, there are 20.4 million veterans in America, which is approximately 10% of the total US adult population right now. And once we get the 2020 census data, that number will probably be going down. And the reality is that not many people know veterans directly. And those that do maybe have a loose affiliation. So a lot of Americans have strong opinions of veterans, but those opinions are based on media. And I believe that we are reinforcing a lot of negative perceptions about our community through our own awareness campaigns, things like 22 a day, things like PTSD awareness, homelessness awareness. And I understand that they come from a good place. However, what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to show why I think that it's actually doing more harm than good. And a lot of the awareness campaigns don't really drive solutions. And so veterans who are, or particularly people who are getting out of the military, are largely unaware that these perceptions exist until it's much too late in the process for them to have course corrected without any significant damage. And we're talking about things like in career fields, right? The employment world. And veterans are largely unaware of these issues, right? And I see a lot of campaigns about problems, but I do not see a lot of campaigns about solutions. And I've been researching this since 2015. And it wasn't until about 2016 when I came across the work of Richard Tedeschi that I had an aha moment and I realized how far off we were. So what I'm going to talk about, again, is Americans' perceptions of veterans are mostly negative, and it's preventing veterans, and in my opinion, the US from really reaching maximum potential. Before we get started, I want to introduce you to this quote. And this is from the book Struggle Well, Thriving in the Aftermath of Trauma. And they're quoting a leading psychiatrist. And basically what it says is, what works for PTSD, anxiety, and depression? Nothing. Nothing is working. And when I look at a lot of the awareness campaigns out there, specifically 22 a day, nobody's showing me that these awareness campaigns are driving numbers down, that we're having a real impact with that approach. And I believe that it's really mindset driven. I believe that we've slipped into a mindset of good intentions without looking at the back end impacts of what those good intentions have, right? And are they really driving results? So what does that mindset look like? Well, the current mindset that you see right there is in the blue line is that when you EAS, after your honeymoon phase, right after you EAS, you're basically just doomed to slide down, right? Your success levels are going to crater, and you're going to get to this kind of this break even, oh shit point, where either you start to course correct or you head down the path to suicide. Like, that's the common narrative. And then really most programs are set up to get you back to a place of where you were at when you left the military. And I think that that's flawed thinking, because I think it's very limited. And I think it's very passive, because it doesn't recognize the value that veterans have to society as a whole. And it doesn't recognize the talents that we bring to the table. We should not be sitting on the sidelines. And I see so much of the awareness campaigns that are out there is focused on our damage. It's not focused on our potential, what we could be for America. And I believe that veterans don't engage with a lot of mental health resources that are out there because they have to convince people that they're screwed up in order to access them. And there's this cognitive dissonance that forms, because I know for me, when I got out, I didn't want to jump into mediocrity. I didn't want to jump into jobs that I hated, right? That wasn't the vision that I had for myself, but I did not know how to get out of that. And frankly, a lot of the resources that are out there are in this mindset of you're only ever going to be so good. And it was never going to be better than what you were in the military. And that's the subtext that accompanies all of this. This is a scarcity mindset, a fear-based mindset, as opposed to a growth mindset. And even as I bring this up, I know so many veterans who talk about PTSD, 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 PTSD. Very few are even familiar with the concept of post-traumatic growth. Most people have never even heard it. Right? We've got all this awareness of PTSD and suicide and homelessness, but a potential solution, i.e. post-traumatic growth, is never talked about. And when it is, it's only in passing. And people say, oh, wow, that's what a great concept. And then go back to doing the exact same thing that they were doing before. Right? You have more to offer than that. So what I'm going to talk about the problem that we're seeing, talk about proposed solutions, and I'm going to talk about what the future looks like if we start making some changes in what we're doing and how we're doing business as it relates to a lot of these problems. Okay, so the main problem, straight up, vets are misunderstood, and we are reinforcing negative perceptions of ourselves. People are already aware, and in my opinion, they are too aware of these mental health issues because they've become so aware that even veterans who don't have mental health issues have mental health issues in the eyes of the general public. Okay, and we're going to talk about two identities that are formed, the issues that are derived from those identities, and ultimately what the net result is of that. All right. So what we see, the two identities that get formed in all of this is that veterans are heroes or veterans are victims or veterans are both. And this is not me making this up, okay? So there are going to be references to all this data at the end of this presentation. So I suggest you stick around. So according to a 2014 study by the Got Your Six Foundation and the U.S. Chamber Foundation, Americans view veterans as one of two extremes, either heroes or victims. Now, according to a 2016 study by Edelman Holdings, approximately 84% of employers in the U.S. believe that veterans are viewed as heroes and that they should be portrayed this way. Okay, and this is out of a sample size of 2,055 employers. Same survey, over 92% of employers feel that mental health programs are necessary to support vets, but only 16% believe veterans have access to good mental health support. So what does that say? Okay, so what's the problem there? Right, is one, people think that you're heroes. Now, let me tell you about the danger of the hero archetype, right? If you are posed as a hero, some unrealistic expectations start getting established in people's mind as far as your behavior and your performance and what you should be on a day-to-day basis. So much so that if you have an off day, it creates this incredible barrier between you and other people because their image of you is totally shattered. Your image of yourself might also be shattered, right? Now let's talk about the victim. And this is where I think we need to really hone in on what we're thinking about when we do these awareness campaigns, and we can insist on continuing to do them. 92% of employers feel that mental health programs are necessary to support vets, but only 16% believe veterans have access to good mental health support. Now, I've read a lot of market research in my day. I used to work in that industry. I have never seen a data point where 92% of people agree on anything. And the only thing that I have ever seen them agree on is that vets need mental health support. So we clearly have awareness, right? That is not the problem. A lack of awareness is not the problem. But when we keep driving awareness to these problems without any type of solution, what we get is the following. So, different study conducted in 2014 by the Greenberg Quinlan Rosner Research Institute conducted a similar survey. Their sample size was 1,381 of adult Americans nationwide and found that 75% believe veterans are more likely to commit suicide than civilians of their same age group. 75%. 75% of people believe that you are more likely to commit suicide than they are. And I'll give you an example from my personal life of how I saw that play out. And it was actually a moment where I realized for the first time what that means in the job market, what that means in just the general public when you're socializing, right? And I was working for a big firm, international firm, and a person from HR came up to me one day and said, Carson, it's been really great to have you on board. I was like, oh, thanks. That's awesome. Yeah, it's been really surprising. I'm like, why has it been surprising? Well, you're just really well adjusted for somebody who was in the Marines. I didn't understand until 2 weeks later what that really meant, right? It implies that she's shocked that I wasn't crazy. And also It implies the opposite, that she believes that most Marines are, right? Or maybe not crazy, but not well adjusted. That is problematic. That has real world consequences, right? These are people in HR who are saying things like this. Same person comes to me a few weeks later, says, "Hey, Carson, we'd love some help figuring out how to hire vets." I said, "Okay, well, what type of veterans are you looking for? If you're looking for people with engineering degrees, you might need to look, maybe Air Force, maybe Navy, right? If you're looking for general leadership qualities, you can get them from pretty much anywhere, right? But you have to know where they are. A lot of them are at colleges." She said, "Well, I don't really know the difference. Mostly we're just interested in taking advantage of the tax breaks." That is not a good way to be viewed in the market, right? Any market. Okay. Now, what we see and what that's taking shape as is the issue that's derived from that is that we are viewed as these damaged leaders, right? So that hero archetype and that victim archetype get molded together into this concept of the damaged leader. And so according to the Center for New American Security, many of these misperceptions are a result of how popular media portrays veterans. But I believe that we play into that. We create these narratives within our own groups, right? And most executives, and according to that same study, over half of corporate executives said that this is where they're getting their information on veterans: media. And now these executives that they talked to in this survey were from 69 leading corporations. And these are corporations like Bank of America, Target, Walmart, Procter & Gamble, Raytheon, many of whom have veteran hiring initiatives on the books. And these are some verbatim answers, right? This is not me paraphrasing for the sake of effect. These are verbatim answers from a USA Today article from some of those same corporate executives. And they say that they fear hiring veterans because they might fly into a rage or, quote, go postal. Go postal. Right? These are people who should know, right? They have veteran hiring initiatives on the books. So I question how effective our awareness campaigns are when that's the net result. Right? And you can say, "Oh, well, it's Hollywood doing this." We own this problem. Whether we want to or not, we own it. Okay, and I'll give you another personal example. I was working with a friend of mine. This person had known me for the better part of a decade, and I was helping him with his company. And we needed some part-time employees who were going to be reliable. We had some turnover issues. I said, "Hey, well, let's go down to the local college. I guarantee there's some veterans there who need flexible hours because they have school schedules. We can offer that, and we can make sure that they get paid well." And this response, the response from a person who knows me, a good, close, personal friend, says, "I don't really want a bunch of strung out vets yelling at customers." And this falls in line with what you see from the Edelman research that, again, is listed at the end of this presentation. It states that only 26% of employers and 22% of non-vets see veterans as strategic assets. Only 26% of employers. And only 22% of the people that you would interact with in the day-to-day world. That you are strategic assets, that you are a problem solver and not a problem to be solved. And you see this disproportionately impacting female veterans, right? So according to the U.S. Chamber Foundation, from their study, only 45% of female veterans report finding a job within 3 months of getting out. Now, we have one of the most educated militaries in the history of the planet, if not the most. I think it is the most educated military in the history of this planet. And some of these female veterans, actually, in fact, many of them, are getting out and they have advanced degrees and they still can't find work. We're talking advanced STEM degrees, engineering degrees, still can't find work because of the impacts of how we are portrayed and how we are portraying ourselves, right? You can't swing a stick in a room with a conversation about veterans and not hit PTSD, suicide, and homelessness. You can't. You can't. People bring it up all the time. Even some of the people that I've invited on my podcast that are civilians, they bring it up. I have to ask them not to, because that's not about moving forward. That's about staying stuck in the past. So the result of that is America loses. Right? We are a strategic asset, and especially when you consider the fact that veterans represent every socioeconomic demographic in the United States. There's no other group of people that can claim that. And they certainly can't claim it from a basis of people who work together to accomplish something incredible. And you look at the numbers of where people are coming from, a lot of them are coming from racial minority groups. But we can't help lead America out of all the crazy stuff that I certainly see going on right now because people don't take us seriously, because they don't see us as strategic assets. They see us as damaged goods. And we are perpetuating these stereotypes because we are not coming to the table with real actionable solutions. We're saying, hey, we want to drive awareness of something. Okay, people are aware. I think the data clearly points out when 92% of people say that, and in a sample size that large, awareness has occurred. We need to move towards solutions. And if you go back to the quote at the beginning, nothing is working, right? What we are doing is not working. We have to fundamentally shift our mindset about what our solution is going to be. There's real world impacts to this. It's good intentions only go so far. Okay. And I'm not trying to be harsh on people because I understand the desire and the motivation to help people, but we got to be solutions focused. So some solutions, and they're really quite simple. Instead of spreading awareness, spread solutions, which means that you might have to get up to speed. You might have to do something that is out of your comfort zone, something that's different. You might actually have to do some research of your own. You might have to identify what your unique skills are such that you can actually apply them to a veteran who's struggling with their transition, not just giving blanket statements, right? We're talking about some do's and don'ts. You gotta step your game up. Got to step your game up. If you are motivated enough to go out and start an awareness campaign, you are motivated enough to take action steps that actually get you up to speed to a point where you can identify the problems that are out there that the veterans are actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Because I've had hundreds, if not thousands, of conversations with veterans over the year at this point while I've been doing this as a veteran. And I have never once, not once, heard that the problem in my life right now is I need better access to mental health resources. I've never heard that. I hear constantly things like, I feel like I don't have any friends. I'm out of shape and I hate what I'm looking at in the mirror. I am in debt up to my eyeballs. I cannot find a job that I give a shit about. Those are real, tangible problems. And those are the things that I believe contribute to that downhill slide, right? That place of despair. And I've heard a lot of veterans describe it as like a type of purgatory, right? You just feel trapped, or you're just wandering alone in a desert with no way out. And continuing to focus on your damage only keeps you mired in that mindset. So I highly recommend these two books. And again, I've recommended these hundreds of times. Certainly Posttraumatic Growth by Richard Tedeschi. Struggle Well is a little bit newer. We got to think differently, right? But out of all the hundreds of people that I've recommended these books to, or even just the concept of post-traumatic growth, go read up on it and get back to me. Tell me what you think. The amount of people who have come back to me is 3. I've had 3 conversations with people following up with me that have actually done that have actually taken time to just familiarize themselves with the concept, right? We cannot afford to be passive about this anymore. We cannot afford to do what I'm going to talk about next, right? Because there are no points awarded for good intentions. None. And I hate to sound mean, but that's reality. So instead of doing that, what we tend to do is we've allowed these topics to become defaults in conversations, right? PTSD, suicide, homelessness, all the time. It's the one thing we focus on, right? 22 push-ups, 22 miles. And what do we do as veterans seeing this problem? What do? We say, hey, here's a suicide hotline number. We complain about the VA and how they're not doing enough. But the reality is, and I'm going to give you a quote from one of my good friends, Top Gun Thompson, don't talk about it, be about it. If you see that this is a problem, don't make it the VA. Don't make it a hotline. Don't do push-ups. Get off your ass and call someone, right? And if you're up to speed because you've been learning about it and you've been able to identify quicker people that are struggling with certain things, and you have an action plan that you can help them with, instead of saying you should go get help, be the help, right? And I'm not telling you to recommend somebody not go to, psychiatric treatment if they need it. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that you have to be more active. If this is something that you so deeply care about, you need to find new mindsets, because what we're doing is not working. If we don't change, the future doesn't really change. We have more of what we have now, right? What we're doing has not changed anything, right? The medications, the therapy sessions, none of those things seem to be working, right? The, hey, call me if you need anything. No, that's passive. That's scarcity-based mindset. That's fear. We got to be active. We have to approach it with an abundance mindset, that not only can we get these people out of this, we can get these people set on an upward trajectory that they never even dreamed possible, right? They want hope, right? They don't want to just walk through the rest of their life feeling like a charity case. They want to bring something to the table. Right now, we are talking to them like they don't. That's the problem. We need to do something better and different, more positive. Start having conversations open to the possibility of the fact that, like, yeah, if you want to be an entrepreneur, do it. Right? You want to start a nonprofit? Do it. You want to run for your local government? Do it. Right? I want veterans to become titans. I want them to become cornerstones of their community, because we have something that so many Americans don't, and that is perspective. And when I see what's going on around us right now, I know America desperately needs that perspective. So your next steps, from my perspective, is you need to read Struggle Well by Ken Falk. Read Posttraumatic Growth Workbook by Richard Tedeschi. If you can't do that because you don't like reading books, then at least dig through the resources at the end of this, and I'll put the links in the comments. At least go read those. Because if you don't agree with me, fine. Right? If you think I'm just an asshole, fine. But you should at least have the intellectual integrity to go evaluate a different concept, to see that there are alternatives out there to the current narrative that we're consistently pushing out. And then you got to make a decision for yourself. How are you going to approach this? Are you going to keep believing the hype? Or are we going to keep hyping up the same concept over and over and over again? And when I promise you what's going to happen is, if you keep doing those things, you'll wonder why veterans aren't engaging. And the reality is that veterans don't want to engage with that type of mentality because they do not want to be pitied. There's cognitive dissonance between how they view themselves and how other people are telling them to view themselves. And if you're a veteran that's dealing with that, that's what's going on, right? It's an identity crisis. But if we keep pushing this narrative, we're only making it harder to find work. We're only making it harder to find friends. We're only making it harder to find success post-military. So here's what you can do for me. So if you agree, great. If you don't agree, that's fine too. You can get a hold of me. This is my direct email, carson@thezenveteran.com. Tell me what you think after you've done the research. If you don't go and do the research, don't waste anybody's time. Don't send your opinions. Don't post comments. Don't do any of that. Go do your own homework. Right? The links are going to be below. You can also go visit thezenveteran.com. I'm on the social medias, but those are the resources. Dig into it for yourself. Come to your own conclusions. You may completely disagree with me, but you may be the person who builds on a concept that actually ends up making a difference, right? A growth mindset. And if the words post-traumatic growth are new to you, that's a problem.